Welcome to Talent Without Pretense. I'm Gerald Gordon, co-founder of ReferenceMe. I spent years watching companies make very expensive, very preventative mistakes around how they hire and how they let people go. This show is where I sit down with HR leaders, CHROs, and people executives who are actually in the room when those decisions get made. No buzzwords, no vendor pitches, just honest conversation about what's working, what's broken, and what needs to change. So let's get into it. Ian, you're a director of HR and recruiting at CommandLink, an enterprise IT platform that's growing fast and doing some things most tech companies struggle with to pull off. Scale the business without losing the people side of it. Today, we're getting into what exactly is broken in the talent acquisition space, what fraudulent candidates are doing in the hiring funnels, and whether the way we onboard people is doing justice to the effort of how we find them or not. So Ian, welcome to the show. I am glad that you're here, and I'm super excited about having this specific conversation. So Ian, tell us a little bit about yourself and the company that you support.
Yeah, thanks, Gerald. My name's Ian Ambrosio. I'm our director of HR and recruiting here at CommandLink. CommandLink is essentially three companies in one. I mean, we're an IT service management provider, an automation platform, and a SaaS company that's all built on our own tech stack from the ground up. We use our tech stack and our clients and customers use our tech stack. So we're a fully remote team. We've got 300 plus people across 12 different countries, fully spread out. And I own the people side of that. So that's anything from recruiting to pieces of compliance, working with our legal team and building out how we operate as a business as we scale with a pretty lean team. Across those 300 plus people, it's myself. I have an HR generalist and a principal recruiter, and we operate globally, and it's a rocket ship for sure, but it's a lot of fun.
And one of the things that we find in this particular market is that we have people that are being extremely creative when it comes to getting in the door and getting hired. And being on the TA space where you all are actually bringing in candidates and interviewing people and things of that nature, I have an interesting question is, what was the most craziest thing you've seen when a candidate actually came in for an interview? And I want to also remind everyone that they are fully remote. And so this is a critical part of their business, being able to bring in top talent and trust them to do the work.
Yeah, I probably have a couple stories. To be honest, it's interesting what we're seeing, right? I don't know if I want to dive into a specific instance, but really, I mean, some of the methods and things we're seeing as a whole, right? And working with doing interviews remotely, and it's almost like I wish we could just go back to hand in your paper resume and in a building and drop it off, right? So I think some of the things we're seeing are pretty wild, and we've had to coach a lot of interviewers on what to look for. I mean, some of those things, I mean, you're doing a video interview and you're really looking for tells and kind of what that is. I mean, one of the craziest things I think we've seen, it has to relate to deep fakes, right? I mean, people where it's not that person on the screen. Like what we see is during the video interview, most of the time it's a blurred background or a different just used background, and throughout the interview you'll see a little bit of like a silhouette appear, kind of like that person's like physical being, like looking at myself right now, flashes with just like basically like a blank avatar icon that looks like a person. So we've seen that. We've seen tons of issues with, I mean, just reading off of an AI script that's just basically generating responses based on what the interviewee or the interviewer is saying. And you can see things like, oh, if the individual's wearing glasses, you can see them kind of like the reflection on the screen, right? We're seeing a lot of this happen. And then there's just the call center element. I mean, we've seen clearly someone join a call. Maybe they didn't get their virtual background up yet, and you can see they're in a call center environment doing this interview, and it kind of just jumps into some of the things we see with these basically businesses built on, oh, we have a ton of people working a variety of jobs. You have the overemployment piece, which there's a whole subreddit on that if you aren't familiar. But there's these operations to either infiltrate companies for data, whatever it may be, or it's just individuals looking for overemployment to kind of skate by at the bare minimum and the most income as possible, right? But the things we're seeing, it seems to be like different on a weekly basis
Mm.
of some of the tells we're seeing, and just and of course, as you mentioned, I mean, we aren't a physical buildings, like we don't have a place to do physical in-person interviews, so it is 100% remote. So we're having to adapt and work as a team to see the tells. And right now, where we are today, and what we're looking for and seeing is different than what we were seeing 3 months ago. So as fast as AI, because AI is a big topic here, right? As fast as AI is evolving, so is what we're seeing in the like fraudulent or we'll call illegitimate candidates coming through and applying.
Huh. I mean, there's so many things that go through my mind. The first thing that you mentioned is a call center. So that means that these companies are trying to actually become part of companies for whatever nefarious reason it is. And they have a shop set up, right? I remember when we used to do testing for mobile devices, right? And we had a farm of all of these different machines so that we can test different types of view sizes and software and things of that nature. But it wasn't for nefarious purposes. It was really, we were just testing our software. But now, based off of what you're saying, it's almost like they're trying to test what they can get away with in these interviews for the purpose of either making more money or actually getting into the company and getting access to their things. So I'm not sure if it's okay for me to ask this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. When you see this ghost figure like poltergeist, because I mean, it just freaks you out. You're looking at somebody and all of a sudden the avatar changes. Do you get to see who they really are? Do you think it's someone coming from another country that's doing it? Is it people within the United States? Like, I'm really curious of what have you seen behind the mask when these situations happen?
Great question. So I don't know if we really ever know, right? I think when that happens, then it goes back to the original person we were talking with. I would like to guess it's from another country. I'm not entirely sure. I can't pinpoint that. But we don't really see much other than, oh, something looks funny here, right? So there's either, because of course when you join a video interview and such, you select your source, right? You select your video source, where your camera is. Well, what I've seen is people might use some sort of like third party cam software, something like OBS or something to just kind of help with that filter of that image is coming from somewhere else. And I don't actually know who's doing the interview. So I don't know if we necessarily ever see who actually is doing the interview, but it may be sent elsewhere for someone that's conducting the interview, and you have someone in the
Wow.
US. I really can't pinpoint it, right? Because even on our ATS and such, I mean, it'll pinpoint, right? It'll try to say, oh, based on the IP, they're located here, or whatever they put on their application. We don't really know. I mean, something as a part of our screening process, though, because we've had to get creative. We've had to coach interviewers and work and adapt. Is something we do now is, I mean, based on where they input for their application, where they're coming from, is we might do a little research on that location first. We look for what are landmarks in that area, and ask on the interview as a part of intros. Oh, I see you're in New York. How far are you away from Staten Island? Or something like that. So we try to ask some of these probing questions to really kind of like, you should know that area, right? I mean, especially if you're living there. So we've tried to do that, but the actual deep fake elements, it's really hard to know. And honestly, we haven't seen it in a little while, but I think it could be because it's just getting better. We
Wow.
don't notice it as much. But I don't think we ever really get behind the scenes. I don't want to make claims that, oh, it's all overseas, it's all from a certain country, and it's trying to get in and target certain data on companies. I don't know that factually. But what I do know is that there's definitely some sort of malicious involved. I just don't, I can't pinpoint factually if like, yep, 100% that's it.
Yeah, and sometimes I think that's how this stuff works. It's so close to being real, but it's not actually real, which is the most dangerous part, right? Because if it was obvious, then everybody would just pick it up and be like, "Oh, this is obvious, it's fake." But it has some truth to it. But that little bit of truth marred with a whole bunch of fakeness is still a problem. So, as an HR generalist, can you help me understand within your company, what does that role entail? And we mentioned one part of training people to do interviews, which I think is critical. But what are the other things that you find yourself doing in that role as an HR generalist?
Yeah, I think are you more so speaking from just like the, "Oh, someone is hired," in like the onboarding space, or as it relates to the recruiting process in
Isn't
general?
that
What's
interesting?
Yeah,
Like we actually have to qualify these things.
yeah.
So let's start with the recruiting piece and then let's go back into the TA piece that you were talking about.
Yeah, yeah. I think the recruiting piece, just if looking from like the HR side, it's really coming down to where that involvement is. So it kind of starts at like that offer stage, right? So if we did, let's say, go through, I mean, fraudulent candidate or something that came through, and let's say they do get to that stage, HR's hat comes on to, right, to really identify, is there something odd here? Is there something that's not quite legitimate with the candidate? So that comes up in background check. It comes up in sending the offer letter, and then also, I mean, timelines on signing the offer letter, questions that come up, clarifying items, and it really comes up as we're trying to work through that onboarding. And then IT equipment, something we have seen before is someone gets to that stage of hiring and then we end up saying, okay, we're not moving forward, is they ask for the IT equipment to be shipped to not the place that we thought it was going to be shipped to, right? So HR's brain and hat goes on as a part of this too. It's not all just living in recruiting and with interviewers. HR has a piece to identify of like, hey, these are non-typical things as it relates to, we've done the handoff from recruiting to HR. What are we noticing? So it is an all hands on deck thing. I don't think the piece of identifying or keeping your eyes peeled for what is a illegitimate candidate just stops at, okay, we've gone through the interviews because maybe someone didn't catch it. It is possible that something slid through because it is getting so, I'll call it good, but it is evolving to where, okay, now everyone's on deck. And then we go into the actual like onboarding piece. Like, let's say someone was hired. That has not happened, but let's say someone is, then we're really evaluating from the HR piece of touch points, right? We've got 30, 60, 90 day where we look at all of our people on a 30, 60, 90-day basis to really just assess how they're molding to the role, how they're getting ingrained in CommandLink, all of those things. So we're still looking at that if someone was hired to say, okay, something's odd here, or we're seeing they're in meetings but not on camera, or they're just not available. So we're always looking at these things. It's a constant process of assessing, and it doesn't just stop during the talent process. It goes all the way through the entire life cycle if it needs to, right? I mean, we're not at that point. We've been really good, knock on wood, of like, hey, we've identified something strange. I'm not getting to that, hey, they're at CommandLink, which is phenomenal. But we do have our safeguards in place to say, okay, if that were to happen, how do we still keep an eye on it and understand if, well, this one slipped through the cracks?
How long does it take for when you say, okay, I did find a candidate that I want to bring in and they got through all the checks, including the background check? How long does it take to go from T0 to T, you're receiving your equipment and you got your first meeting with your manager or something
Yeah.
like
Yeah, I this is something I'll put CommandLink on a pedestal for. We're pretty fast. We're pretty incredible with our process. We've got a phenomenal team just across all departments for interviewers and recruiting. And really, I mean, we can identify someone on a Monday, rush through interviews, get it done, identify, have an offer go out Wednesday, start the background check. And once that clears, which if it clears by Thursday, their equipment would be in the mail on Thursday. And then if they were able to start on Monday, just depending on timelines of needing to provide notice and such, if they don't have to, then they're starting Monday, right? We can be really quick on getting that. However, if there is some sort of, we're not sure, or we're identifying or seeing strange things through the background check and either addresses submitted, not matching location, and those are all checks we're doing and checks and balances throughout the piece, then we will halt that. I mean, if we see that, we could go from interviews offer Wednesday to potentially rescinded offer Wednesday or Thursday, where we have these checks and balances put in place and we're really quick with approvals and we really work like a well-oiled machine. We don't have red tape. At CommandLink, we try to keep it as flat as can be. It's very much the environment of, hey, if you know the CFO, his name is Daniel, I report to Daniel, is the decision maker on something, go right to Daniel, right? Don't go through you don't always need to go through these checks and balances. So that's kind of how we operate through the recruiting process too, of let's just move fast. It's a great candidate experience for one. It's always candidate experience. What are they experiencing? What has that great lasting impression for how CommandLink handled things? And then also for our own time and process. We hire people because we're missing something, right? That's the reason we hire someone. We don't have something, so we have to bring someone in. So we want to do that fast as well, just for business operations.
Okay. Why don't you talk a little bit about your interview process? Because I
Yeah.
think it's very unique, the fact that not that most companies are not managing remote, but it seems like from the very beginning, you all have started with remote. And if I'm wrong on that, correct me. But if you started as remote, that means that there's a totally different mindset of how this company runs. So I'm very curious of, what does the total interview process look like? And maybe let's look at it from maybe senior, very high level, executive level, things like that. I'm curious to see how that plays out at CommandLink.
Yeah. Yeah. A little backstory on it, right? So we are 100% remote. We've been remote since day one, and we've had pretty incredible scaling. I mean, since I joined and came on board to CommandLink essentially as our first true HR experienced professional about 2.5 years ago, we were right at about 100 people at that time. So 100 people between the United States and international. We have teams in Latin America, which we had about like 20, maybe less than 20 in Latin America at that time. And I mentioned as of today, we are 300 plus, right? So in 2.5 years, we've gone from 100 to 300 plus, which also includes going from 20 or so internationally from last June to now over 130 internationally. So, with that in mind and that scaling and growth, of course, recruiting process has to adopt. And how are we doing that? Vetting talent and scaling like a machine for the orgs that need to grow. So the recruiting process has also been very fluid since I started, and there's been a lot of refinements and adjustments. And I think part of that, outside of just the regular norms of you have application to recruiter screen to hiring manager interview and then maybe technical interview, ours really varies per role and how we support that. But what I'll say is our tools have helped us grow to do that. So there's a lot of different tools we're using. Of course, our ATS, we are partnered with Rippling for our ATS system, and that has been a system that has really evolved. Something last year they rolled out was recorded interviews. So of course, candidates have the opportunity to opt out of a recorded interview if they like, but the recorded interviews happen automatically, and it's allowed us to rethink our recruiting process also, where instead of so and so needs to meet with the candidate now, we advise watch the recorded interview and
Oh,
determine if we need another interview or not. So we're able to kind of trim and work the interview process very fluidly. But as I mentioned, we've got one principal recruiter. His name's Scott, also incredible. I'm always going to shout out my team. But he's our one recruiter across all of the orgs and across the entire company. We are hiring another G&A recruiter now, which is great, but he's supporting all of them. So we've had to really adopt this kind of tiered model of what recruiting support looks like, because the actual interview process differs between our managed services group and our software engineering group. Of course, the software engineering team, they have CoderByte, which is what we use for kind of like technical screening, similar to like a hacker rank of sorts. CoderByte's been great for us, and it's kind of like a do this assessment and then we review it. It has fraud detection in it. Really cool system. And that's kind of like a first step. And then it goes to recruiter screen. But that varies from the managed services, which they don't have a test like that. And they also don't get a recruiter screen. Instead, the goal is Scott, through our tools, would then do scheduling and maybe applicant review, right? Just like reviewing applicants, bookmarking the ones that are, hey, maybe you should look at this one. We'll see if they move forward. Because, of course, 100% remote, I mean, we can post a role and get 400 applications overnight. So there's a lot going on there, but we have kind of a tiered model, right? So we have our essentials, which is basically just application bucket review and pushing forward for automated scheduling, because the ATS does have a similar function to like Calendly, where you can push it through, the candidate can select a time, and then boom, it puts it through and they schedule. So it makes the recruiting coordinator work actually very easy. So we have our essentials, and then we have at the top, we have our basically dedicated support, right? So dedicated support from Scott is going to have things like sourcing. It's going to have pre-screens. It's going to have true like white glove of moving a candidate from point A to point B. So that piece exists. And then we kind of have a hybrid approach, right? So maybe there's a recruiting screen, but the actual application flow is enough to where dedicated sourcing doesn't need to take place, right? So we kind of have these tiered models of how we basically are engaging our recruiting team in order to support managers for hiring. But the process itself, it does change per role. I mean, if we're looking at senior roles, let's say just talking about software in a vacuum, right? Our software engineering team, high, fast growing team. Of course, we have a SaaS product. The senior group, may have a coder application review, the coder bite assessment we talked about, and then a recruiter screen. And then they would likely move to a technical screen of sorts that may be reviewing the coder bite they did and also some new questions, followed by a hiring manager interview. And then you're at offer. But a IC type of role, traditional software engineer, maybe there isn't a recruiter screen. Maybe it's coder bite, then going right to a technical, then the hiring manager, or it's coder bite, hiring manager. It really depends, right? And I think does also go back to those recorded interviews. Let's say there's a technical interview done and the hiring manager reviews it and they got enough signals of just like yeah, I want to hire this person. And then maybe it's just a 15-minute call with the hiring manager. And we do adapt, we're fluid, and we really look at the candidate themselves and how they've done through the process to determine, hey, can we flex? Can we offer a different process? But of course, that all then ties back to the original beginning of our conversation, which is AI and how candidates are using AI. And outside of just fraudulent, maybe it's just a candidate that we can tell is not illegitimate, but they are just using AI. That's another thing we're assessing for and how that's being used.
Okay. All right. So I'll ask you a deeper question, right? So I've been at companies where they felt that without having more of a committee in doing the hiring, so having maybe 2 or 3 hiring managers also in the mix so that there's less bias associated with the person that they're going to work with, they felt that that helps in adaptability and ensuring that you're getting enough voices. But when you're going fast, the way that CommandLink is going, have you run into, well, this is really just one voice, even though they may be the same people working on the team? How do you answer that particular question?
Yeah, there's definitely a piece of it, right? So, I mean, one, senior roles that let's say are critical, right? I mean, critical roles to the business working on a specific hero product or new feature, whatever that is. We do have more hiring managers from, let's say, different teams involved, right? It does still correlate to, I mean, we can move fast. I mean, we've basically got speed dial to be like, hey, can you do an interview? And we work as a team to prioritize this is really good. Let me drop things and do this interview. So we do operate on that model. We've got a very tight group, but we will engage managers from, let's say, other teams working on different products and such. And we do have a debrief. So we have a debrief that gets scheduled. Again, the ATS makes it really easy to schedule that, where it's basically like a go or no go. Similar to like in software, you might have a go or no go meeting. We do it for recruiting as well. So
Okay.
for these roles that there is cross-functional hiring manager interviews, we basically jump on a call. Let's say there were 3 of them and they start with a thumbs up or thumbs down. And then they go into their feedback as one another, what they observed and such. And then we do another thumbs up, thumbs down.
Okay.
So we do have an approach to do that. It's a controlled way of understanding what other hiring managers are thinking, having a collaborative conversation around it. And that is done for those senior, more impactful types of roles. We don't always do it for, I mean, we're just hiring another person to the team because of just workload. It's mostly reserved for, it's a manager level individual, director, or just a senior principal engineer who's working on some pretty important pieces for CommandLink.
Okay, I absolutely love that. If we go back to the TA space, right? So we talked about how your company deals with hiring. We also talked about the growth of your hiring. Like you are exponentially growing. You did almost close to 200 people in 2 years or something like that, including international. That's a very big deal. But what I want to ask you about now is how well is your ATS working when you open a job position and then 1,000 people apply? And of course, I always say that there's this AI versus AI going on, right? So you got the AI from the candidate side, but of course, everybody's using AI to the best of their ability and they're going to use it as a way to actually get in the door. But on the other side, the ATS is also using AI to try to find a right fit. And I know that AI has hallucinations and is not always perfect. So, how do you all manage that gap between I got 1,000 people that apply for this job, I got 400 that are capable? How does this all work for you all when you're bringing people in?
Great question. Because I think we are kind of at this point in the world where AI is just talking to AI, right? I mean,
Yes.
I've seen the TikToks and reels of they put up like Gemini and ChatGPT on their phones vocally, and they're just talking to each other, and it's crazy. So, so we are kind of entering that world, right? Where candidates are tailoring their resumes to be perfect for the job. So, and 100%, you always should tailor your resume. You shouldn't just blast it out there. That's been a true for forever, right? But people are using AI to do it now. And of course, on the ATS side, all ATSs are built now to do some of that assessing with AI also. I think there's a little bit of a myth that exists just on the, oh, your resume is just being rejected by the ATS and it's the ATS's fault and ATS just rejects things. But honestly, it's still not that, right? I mean, where there's still a manual rejection that takes place. We do build things maybe like knockout questions. Knockout questions exist during an application to essentially auto reject someone. So maybe that's where the misconception comes in because they answered, oh, I have 1 year of experience instead of 5. And the question called for if you answer 4 or below, it auto rejects you. So there's those like just original methods. And then now you have the AI piece. So Rippling and a lot of different ATS systems, they do roll out it looks through all of the resumes and then gives you like a percentage match to the role, right? So it gives you a percentage of what parameters we set up. We basically set like evaluation criteria, could be 3 things, could be 10 things of their resume needs to say XYZ or any of these items. It then is reviewing and looking at all the resumes to then determine what is the percent match to the role based on the criteria. And the ATS is really good at, as far as we've seen, at looking at these things. And I don't want to call it ranking, but I mean, it is giving us the percentage of its match to the criteria we set for the role. And then we kind of hold a high bar, right? Maybe we start in the first couple of weeks of that it has to be 100% match. If it is under 100% match, it's rejected, right? But a manual rejection is still taking place. AI is not making the rejection on its own. We don't operate that way. It helps us review and rank and then move through that, but we still have to have a rejection take place. But
Yeah, but
part
if
of
you
the
got 1,500 come in, are you looking at all 500?
No. So we do operate, I mean, a little bit on a first come, first serve, right? I mean, the first applications are the ones that we start with. We go in batches. Maybe we're going 20 at a time because we
Oh,
do see that high volume. But there's another piece that is built within some of the AI we look for, which is exact matches to the job description, because that is something we're seeing a lot on the candidate side with utilizing AI. And this is where smart AI usage comes into play. And I think it's, yeah,
so
employers
when
are,
you say exact match is bad because
yes,
it's taking.
because we have seen on applications that say 5 years experience or something using the CommandLink platform. It's like, okay. We've seen things that say, oh, they're already at CommandLink. So sometimes people's usage of AI, I don't want to call it bad, but I mean it's too real in trying to say, oh yeah, I'm going to build your resume based off of this job description and saying you're doing this job. So that is something we look for too, because we see that more than you would think. So that is something that we screen out. Yeah, they're coming up as 100%, but then there's another flag that occurs of, hey, this was almost too perfect, right?
Wow. Yeah. So,
So
in the machine learning space, they call that overfitting,
mhm.
where you train the data on the thing that you actually wanted to output. And instead of it having the true generalities, it just gives you exactly what you want every single time because it's trained on the same data. So it's like, yeah, I'm going to give this exact job description, make sure it 100% matches. I'm going to use every single word in the job description. And you have no idea who the real person is underneath that.
Yeah, and just to add quick on it, it's kind of, if I create an analogy for it, it's like if you look back to what everyone knows, someone going through school and education, early elementary is, well, why can't I use a calculator? Because I can use a calculator in the real world. So why would I not use it now? It's kind of like that. I mean, things are trying to be too perfect by using the calculator, which is AI, to build something perfect. And then you get to the interview and it's a complete bomb because it's not matching what you said on your resume. And they want to use the calculator earlier. I don't want to say like don't use your tools, but use them in a way that it can complement your actual skills, not just say I have these skills, but I don't have them. Right. There's a right and wrong way to use the AI tools and building your resume and displaying I have this experience. If you're just covering it with, oh yeah, it's exactly perfect to the role, and then you get to the interviews and it's falling short of that, you're probably going to see a rejection during the interviews. We would rather see it's complementing it, and then you're asked a question for something maybe you don't know. Then I would rather see, yeah, I'm not really sure, but I would use these tools to make sure I know that, or to up level in that. That to me sits better than something that's clearly, yeah, they're reading off something on their screen. And they clearly don't know it, but they told me they know it. So
All right, so
checks and balances.
yours is the lie detector.
Yeah.
That's a big thing for you. Okay.
Yeah.
So 2 things I wanna bring up. Number 1 is, will we ever get to the point where we just let AI be part of the interview, right? So imagine having a virtual person on the side sitting down while the interviewer is talking and the interviewee is talking, and then you ask questions also to the AI, and the AI is actually as part of the conversation. Because now knowing how to actually use the tools is a part of the job, even in coding, right? In coding right now, Anthropic mentioned nobody's writing syntax. They talk about the ideas, they talk about the design, and then the system is actually writing the code. And that is a reality. So when does it become that we just let AI be a part of the discussion? The questions get harder, but AI is now just a normal part of the interview.
Yeah, I think what you're mentioning there is actually something that I have not discussed, looked into, or talked about. I think we're seeing a lot of the like AI recruiter, which ends up being like the first interview in a process, similar to like they did one-way video interviews, things with like Bright Hire, and it's just like not a great experience for the candidate. I think there's been a lot of trying to replace that with a AI interviewer, and it's just a person talking, the candidate talking to AI and doing the interview, which I think also is a pretty poor experience, despite how perfect it can get. So what you're talking about is actually interesting, and I think would be a way that I think would be received better, right? Because I think everyone is using AI. Everyone has become their own what is called a prompt engineer, which I don't even think prompting is really needed anymore either. I talk to Claude. It might be more than my wife now, which is another topic, but I'm always in it, and I don't even really have to think about prompts anymore. It just works. It's great, and love it. So everyone is using it, and the way you're mentioning it is just another way of using it and trying to complement skills and empower people. It empowers the recruiter and who's doing the interview, and it also would be received well by the candidate, I would hope, because they're still talking to a person. They're still talking to a person, but now you kind of have this middle person to either ask different questions that maybe got missed. I think AI is really good at like assessing, as long as you build it into to assess, but it's good to recognize things might be missed. So maybe it's able to ask follow-up questions. Maybe it's built with the interviewer to, you have this sub list of questions, and then it's built to say, I ask this question, AI interviewer, do the follow-up question. To keep a flow, I think something interviewers run into is they have this list. It's this, okay, I got to go through my list of questions and I forget my follow-ups. And it just is, okay, great, next question. An AI like mediator, right, would be something if I in my interview process, would work as a follow-up interviewer,
Yeah,
right? So
you could give it all the information that you know about the candidate so far so
and
that it
then,
kinda understands their background and asks really great additional questions. I
yeah,
you see that in the I mean, I like that idea because we all know we're gonna be using it anyway, and how you use it can amplify, especially if you're a knowledge worker, amplify your work. I think it'd be an incredible interview. Literally, that person, it's there. We all know it's there, and it's actually just a part of the conversation. Might even jump in before you're about to ask the second question.
yeah,
"Hold on,
it's
I
it's
have a"
evolving. Yeah, yeah, it's evolving of like the note takers we see, right? We see
Yes.
everyone who has note takers, Otter AI or other note takers, whatever it is. Why have a note taker join when you have an AI interviewer join that is, one, also taking a transcript and notes, but also can be a part of the conversation? I think that's a great advancement of things to help interviews also just flow better, because I think that big thing is the follow-up, right? So interviewers just become a checklist and one-sided, but if it can be tasked with a, hey, the candidate just asked this question, answered this question, now the AI interviewer follow up on that question to maybe probe more. So task it with that, because interviewers commonly will forget that and they'll just move on to the next question.
Now, you and I are talking about this, and you know it's gonna come up, right? And we're gonna be like, "We had it first. We talked about this whole follow-up thing
Mhm.
first." But I know it's happening. We'll close soon, but one of the things that we talked about that I wanted to ask you about is one of the things that Reference Me, my company, tries to do is bring back the human element and responsibility of a particular craft by using references as the primary way. I know that you didn't mention in your process the reference part, but I think that where we're going, people trusting people is going to be critical. And at Reference Me, what we're doing is we're collecting references even before they fill out a job application. So you would think of it as like the job application for a VP of engineering. You cannot apply for this role unless you have 8 references. And people may argue, well, 8 is a lot, right? Well, we are looking for signal and looking for the people that are real people that you've connected to and that you worked with in the past, and being able to extract that information in such a way that when you have 1,000 people that apply, maybe it gets brought down to 20, because not only is their application and their resume good, but their references tell an important story that may be more aligned to what the company wants. And if you collect those references, not at the time that you're just applying for the job, like you're not just collecting references and modifying the references, references can stay in a point in time. That gives you a little different view of who this person could be for your organization and the type of things that they've been able to solve. And then the real tale is, if you're a VP of engineering and you can't get 8 references, that tells you something also, because a VP of engineering should be across many different disciplines, which means that there's probably something broken there. What do you think about that?
it it's a good thing to try and reshape and recreate for recruiting and talent in the world we're in now, right? Because I think, I mean, why I didn't mention references is because, I mean, we don't have a standard process to do them, right? I've never thought of doing it prior to any interviews or as a part of application, because the idea always was, oh, you do it after. But
After.
at that point, why? What's it matter, right? We've done interviews, we've vetted, we kind of have a decision. What's a reference going to tell us that's different? And also, who's going to give a bad reference? I mean, there's that piece of it. And then there was kind of a reshape of, well, the reference check should be, maybe we do it as something more for the manager, as a, how can I manage this person? How does this person work? And some of those things that maybe use the reference call to get that. But even that, it's like fine, but it still felt more of like a check the box. So the idea to kind of collect references prior is, it's an interesting concept that it feels like it's more similar to some of the things you might see when applying to like governments and like ITAR type of roles, where, I mean, I know SpaceX, I think they still like ask for ACT and SAT scores on the applications, right? So it's similar in the vein of that. And my question for you is more of like, if you guys are doing this now, trying it, you have customers, is how much are you seeing on kind of like the funnel that kind of gets closed? And is it too much? Are you closing the funnel too much with that kind of approach? And potentially maybe you're missing people, because I know some candidates we've interviewed that ends up being an awesome candidate. They're just like, yeah, I don't feel comfortable giving that at this time, but maybe they would later in the process. So how's that kind of been with some of like the funnel reduction that I can probably 100% guarantee your people would experience?
So the nice thing is that the candidates get to keep the references themselves, so they can reuse it, right? Instead of asking the same person over and over again, like I got a principal engineer I'm working with, I'm going to go apply to these 5 jobs. 3 of them want references. This person has been a very good reference for me. It's nice to not have to ask that person over and over again. You have a repository of your own references. What we've seen was the same thing that you said. Like, oh, that's actually refreshing. We're doing it in a different way. But we do have other companies that are like, oh, well, this is going to slow me down. And I'm like, well, yeah, but we want to slow you down so that when you bring these people in, you really feel like they have something that can help you above and beyond an AI driven resume. And so I've seen it on both sides. Hey, at this point, it does benefit the company drastically at the senior levels, because at the senior levels, making one hire and then if you have to let them go can be catastrophic. So we see a lot of people taking advantage of that. And then, yeah, giving value to the candidate not having to ask the same person over and over again for a reference. It's already nerve wracking to do it anyway. So it saves time. And then lastly, it keeps the companies honest too. You say that you want to hire somebody fairly. So if you say you want to hire someone fairly, this gives an opportunity for a real reason why you decided not to bring that person in, even though everybody had the same resume and they had the same skill. So now, if they have the same resume, the same skill, and they're all friends with your CFO, as an example, in order to actually even some of that out, references can help. And I'm not talking about 1 or 2, because 1 or 2, you could just go ask your cousin to help you. But when you have 8, it's a different story, because those individuals, especially at the higher levels, they're not just going to give their references to anybody. They work too hard in order to get to where they are. So there's a trust factor that happens there. And then, of course, you have access to double check. Even though our company does the double checking for you still get the access to double check on your own. And what we've seen was a higher grade of candidate that comes in. We see a total less amount of work. It's not that we bypass the ATS, but it's almost like you don't even spend time going to the ATS unless that person is willing to actually give up their references. So yeah, it's more like a buyer's market right now. When I would say seller's market. It's a
Sellers market. Yeah.
seller's market right now. So as a company, you could just say that is the criteria. If you don't want to spend time doing this, you
Then
can
we
move
won't
on
spend
to
time.
another. Yeah, you
Yeah.
move on to another company, because I have 6 or 7 people I got to interview. So if I can eliminate even 2 out of the 6, that saves time so people in my company can go work on something else versus, man, I wish I had some signal ahead of time before I went all the way through this process. And the last thing I'll say, which is even worse, is that you get all the way through the process, then you start looking at their references and you're like, oh, that's going to be a problem.
Hmm.
And so now, instead of having it up front, you had to do it all the way at the back, only to realize you did the background
Yeah.
check, everybody came together, all the things, and the references clearly indicate that this person will have an issue in this role. So, and we're not looking for bad references, we're looking for signal across the references. So that's how we support our clients in that regard.
Very cool. Yeah, it's a different approach that I think it makes sense, right? I think again we're building more criteria. I mean, I've seen other companies doing things as it relates to like back end checks for the things like overemployment and verifying like actual employment for people through I don't know what means, but as a part of like the pre like screening process, there's things I've seen of that. But this is a concept I haven't thought of, which is like look at it from the reference angle. And it's interesting and definitely something I haven't thought of. That seems, I mean, like a good way to do it, right? To help in some of this identifying the fraudulent and things like that.
Yeah, it's just another way to help because we have a lot of things that are going on. Ian, this was fantastic. I really enjoyed having this conversation with you. I think that people will get a lot out of this discussion as they listen towards this. And then what I want to say to you all out there, it is very difficult right now, but it won't always be this way. You will eventually get hired. You will eventually find a role. However, paying attention to shows like this, where we have leaders like Ian and other leaders that have been on the show, they just give you a glimpse of what's happening on the background so that it'll make you better when you decide to go in for an interview. So we want to thank CommandLink for lending us one of their great employees, Ian, as we are embarking on this journey to see what happens behind the scenes, not necessarily what everybody is saying in the papers, but what is the experience from the HR leader as they are evolving in this new AI space. So, Ian, thank you again for joining us.
Thanks, Gerald. Appreciate the time today.